to find overgrown cemeteries or desecrated graves. Any effort you put into identifying and documenting graves will be appreciated by living descendants who are tracing their family history. Headstones crumble and deteriorate. If no record of burial exists in the library or, like on Find a Grave, there's a risk that whatever still survives will not be available in the future. If you cannot find a death certificate for your ancestors' burial, check these following places. Historic cemeteries. It is common to find burial sites, often unkempt, of formerly enslaved people or their descendants laid to rest in Confederate cemeteries or cemeteries which are part of what now is an extinct community. Number 2, the property where your ancestor lived during enslavement. Many plantations had a burial site for deceased people who were enslaved, and they used this burial site to lay the descendant to rest long after freedom came. Number 3, church site of the former owner. If the former owner had a cemetery on the church site, check the grounds for the burials of African Americans. Early church site of the Emancipated Ancestor. Many African American communities put their money together to purchase land for churches and a burial site of their own if they were not allowed to be buried in the traditional places they used prior to emancipation. Ancestors' land. That's the 5th one. Often, the land acquired by the freedmen became an early burial spot for family members. Pauper cemetery. Donated land or land designated to be used as a burial place for the less fortunate became the burial spot for African Americans who were destitute. The State Hospital Cemetery. That's the next one. African Americans confined to state or mental hospitals can be found to be buried in the cemetery on the grounds. The next one, the state prison. African Americans who died while incarcerated were often buried in the cemeteries owned by the state prison. Private land. Many landowners many lands owned by African Americans after enslavement were lost. Trace the deeds to these properties to determine the current owners. There is a burial spot or cemetery on private land, and this will require permission if the current owner to gain access. You might think of some more places that you could turn to when you can't find the death certificate of your ancestor. I had a great-grandmother named Lula Johnson Vance. She was married to Reverend Lafayette Franklin Vance. The only place that I found that she was buried, which she was buried in Randolph Cemetery in Columbia, South Carolina, was in the Palmetto Leader. It was in an issue from 1929, August 8th. There's no other place that I could have documented her burial. The funeral home was gone. Only the death certificate and That article told me where she was buried. I hope you've enjoyed this excerpt. And if you haven't bought the book, you'll see what you're missing. Bye.